at Sabrachi Jewelry Design, or Sabrachi. I don't even say his name right anymore because of Zach. He's a sponsor of Now We Go, and he's a sponsor of this show. He's a dual sponsor. He's a gemologist. He's a jeweler. He's specialized in CAD design, and he's also a branding specialist. You need anything at all done in those categories, Matt is the best motherfucker for that. It's D'Antonio and Klein Jewelers in Philadelphia, PA, and he's also going to be doing it soon to be in Lehigh Valley, PA. You can call or DM for appointments. He's in Philly on 726 Sanson Street, and you can follow him on social media at Sabraki Jewelry Design. He's made pendants for finishers. We're working on stuff together. It's not just jewelry. We're working on pendants and all kinds of things. He's making rings. He can do anything that you need, from design to gems to jewelers. He is the real deal, and I'm excited. He's a childhood friend who grew a diamond business. He's a jeweler. We did a podcast with him. It's a cool story. Check him out. Sabraki Jewelry Designs. Mad J's Barbecue, www.madjsbarbecue.com. They take cash, they take credit card. You can order online. Order online. It's the easiest for everybody. They can also call in their order. They got 2 locations. They are killing the barbecue game. Started out small. Now these guys got 2 separate locations. They're doing catering. They're doing pop-ups at Seven Sirens Brewery. What else can these guys do? The Nazareth location is over at 52 East Lawn Road. Anybody knows where Nazareth is? It's down past 7-Eleven, right next to Rita's. Shout out Calandra. They are at 52 East Lawn Road, and that's 610-365-7275, and www.madjsbarbecue.com. Justin just opened up the second location, and he is a part of Willow Creek Brewery, and that is 643 Penn Avenue, West Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm going to be having these guys on the show, and they are crushing barbecue, catering, in-store, pickup. They're doing it all, man. They're doing it all. Check them out at madjsbarbecue.com, and thank you for being a sponsor. Precision Laser. Precision Laser is a family-owned aesthetic laser practice in Easton, Pennsylvania that was founded in 2019. They offer laser hair removal, laser tattoo removal, vascular and pigmented lesion removal, acne treatment, and more. Their team of licensed experts use cutting-edge technology and safe laser protocols to deliver you the best skin results throughout Easton, New Jersey, and the greater Lehigh Valley. They provide free consultations and affordable pricing to make laser treatments accessible to you all. To learn more about their services or book an appointment, please go to precisionlaserspecialist.com or call 484-306-0089. They are located at 42 South 3rd Street in Easton, PA, 18042. What are they running this summer? Hair removal. I'd like to get this whole thing removed because of what do I want? A summer beach bod. They are running for $165 per session. You pick 2. Armpits, bikini Brazilian, upper legs, lower legs. This is what we're doing with them. I'm excited to have them, and I'm excited for them to be working with us. They're on the podcast. You can check out everything they're doing on the website, and thank you for being a sponsor. Look good this summer. Look good. Timer set. Recording and rolling. I think we're at episode, this will probably be 196. We'll jump right into it. How are you?
Oh, wonderful.
We've been trying to do this for probably a year.
It has been so long.
With everyone's schedule and everything, it gets crazy. And then, even setting it up tonight, we had to do a later show. I really enjoy bringing the people in from Finishers because we've always crossed paths. And we've always, I did the food for you guys at one time. So I feel like everybody I keep kind of getting to know more, but it's only through passing by. So it's cool to bring people down here from the school and become friends with them because I get, you know what I mean? When the hell would we get to talk for over an hour? It's every time you're at the tournaments and everything, you're working or you're competing, and then I run into you and you're like, oh, I'm like, this is crazy. But ever since I've known the school, you've always been a part of it. And then I follow you on social media, so I kind of want to dig into how you got involved with Finishers, how you got into martial arts. Was it at a young age? Where did this journey of kind of what you're doing with jiu-jitsu start?
It was not at all at a young age, actually. Basically in my early 20s is whenever I discovered the UFC, even though it had been around for a bit.
Yeah.
Even whenever I was in high school, there was the Ultimate Fighter and all that stuff. Somehow I completely just missed that. But when I did finally discover fighting, I was kind of really into it. I've always been a crazy fangirl, as I like to describe myself.
That's cool.
So, I mean, Ronda was like,
I was a big time back then.
yeah, making her debut like towards the beginning of when I started to get into it. So that kind of took off for me as far as being really into MMA and
Because she had like, it wasn't just like Ronda was fighting, like those were events.
Oh,
like I remember going to a couple at like Buffalo Wild Wings, and like the place was packed out because Ronda Rousey was fighting, and it wasn't even people who were watching UFC all the time. Like they were there to watch a Ronda Rousey fight. Like that was big for MMA back in the day.
Yeah, even watching like the preview videos leading up to that very first fight with Liz Carmouche.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see all of that at the time. So that just got me really into, I guess, the MMA scene and making me think that I wanted to start training at some point.
Where did you go first when you wanted to start? Like, where did that journey go then from you watching it and then being like, I'm gonna go into a school, because that's nerve-wracking to want to go into a school and check it out, and like, how did you find, was Finishers the first place you went?
Oh no. I've got quite an interesting story. I'm from Central PA.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you're like kind of far away.
Yeah, well, not anymore, luckily.
True.
But my first school was just like, Googling, and basically I found a local school, and it was a really traditional gi school in the area. So that's kind of where I started. Honestly, I had this idea in my mind that I really wanted to do like Muay Thai, but that kind of never worked out. I ended up at a mainly jiu-jitsu school. Like they didn't have a striking program or anything. So I was doing the gi, it was all right. I didn't have a lot of time because I was working a couple jobs and, just training when I can. But almost 2 years into my journey, I would say, like, I won a couple competitions, got my blue belt, and then I was like, okay, if I do like a local Naga, now I'm intermediate level because I'm blue belt, and now people can heel hook me. And most traditional gyms, including the one where I was training at the time, don't really teach anything about leg locks. And I was like, okay, there's so much that I don't know. Basically in my head, I was like, I don't want to go out there and get smoked by some 10th Planet chick that knows all this weird stuff that I don't know. So how do you remedy that? Go and train at 10th Planet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started the crazy trips of 2 hours each way going to 10th Planet Bethlehem.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So where did you find the school? You found it online, and then where were they at? Were they over by Jimmy John's, or how early back? Because when I met them, they were at Jimmy John's, and I'm trying to think, they moved the school 2 times or 1 time. It was basically a move to the one by Redner's and then a move again. So where were you at when you started training?
Well, the funny thing is, when I was still really primarily at the gi school, a friend of mine from Maryland that I had met at some random Henner Gracie seminar, he was like, hey, you should come and train at this school with me. Like, I'll pick you up on the way. I'm going to go for this Labor Day open mat. And he was like, it's 10th Planet. Grace Gundrum trains there. I was already a fan because I was watching
so cool.
EVI and stuff. She already had a few special matches. So she was already like a child at the time, but still a name to me. And so I thought it was really cool. So I went with him. And that was only like 8 months into training. Right before I did my first competition. But then basically a year later is right after when I got my blue belt, and I kind of picked up again where I was like, okay, I went once, I had a great time. I know they know a lot of stuff. Like 10th Planet is a very specific style, and they teach a lot of different things and really unique movements, and also movements that I thought would go really well with my body type. Like I'm long, lanky, kind of flexible. That type that fits into the 10th Planet mold, you could say. So yeah, after I got my blue belt, I started training out there, like cross training more often. And then it kind of developed from there. Basically, my first gym got a little upset that I was cross training. Yeah. So I ended up just going with 10th Planet Bethlehem full time. So for like 2.5 years, I was driving 2 hours each way.
Damn.
And yeah, training at Bethlehem.
How many times a week were you coming over?
For the most part, like 3.
You were making that trip 3 times a week, driving 2 hours?
Yeah. 3, on good weeks 4. Like once I started to adjust my schedule, because for some reason I always end up working 2 jobs. I was working 2 jobs for most of my training experience. So I was like working the 9 to 5 type deal during the week, and then on the weekend I was waitress. So, but once I started cutting back on
Did you always have a full plate like this growing up, like working? Like, where does that come from? Where, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people don't fill their, I mean, I do it. That's why I'm asking. But, like, I've always had multiple jobs. I've always had, like, a thing I'm doing on the side. But, I mean, for you to be driving that much, working 2 jobs, like, where does that come that you want your plate that full?
I blame my parents. I don't know. They raised me to be an overachiever.
Yeah.
I feel like me
It's
and
not a
my
bad
brother
thing.
both, you know,
Yeah.
they're really into working hard and that kind of stuff. And at the time, I owned a condo in Mechanicsburg, and I lived by myself. So, I mean, I had bills to pay too.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason why I was working 2 jobs. I really like living by myself, you know.
Yeah,
but
living alone's awesome.
That shit's expensive.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I always have kind of loaded up my plate. You know, there was even a time where I was like, had a full-time job and was waitressing and was in college doing classes online, like finishing up my bachelor's degree. So I work best under pressure, I feel.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was just interested because when you said all that, I'm like, you know, some people don't do that at all. Like, I know people that just work a job and they go home and then that's all they do. But I've always had way too much shit going on. And then if I'm not doing that, I get bored. And then, you know, I fall into doing stupid shit. But like when I started doing the clothing company, that's when like I really started doing. And then when I had a purpose to have money to go into something, you know, like I was telling you, I lived in Virginia. Like when I lived down there, I worked at a screen printing shop because I wanted to know more about the apparel. And then I worked at a bar cooking part-time just for the extra money. And then I volunteered. It wasn't volunteer because I got paid, but it was like a terrible paycheck. But I worked at a Y in charge of the skate park, which was they basically just didn't want people coming in. So I had like 3 to 4 jobs in Virginia. And then, you know, and then it's not easy to juggle all that.
Yeah.
But every time I see you, like I said, you're busy, but now it makes sense because you enjoy that full plate.
Oh, yeah.
So now you're driving back and forth. You know, now you're full time in the 10th Planet, and you know you're driving that 2-hour drive. I mean, I was kind of saying like, damn, but there is a lot of people that do travel to that school. It's not just a school, like it's a special place.
Oh, especially now.
Yeah.
At that point, people thought I was crazy. Let's be real. It was before Grace even had her blue belt.
Yeah.
You know, now it's like.
Where was the school then back then? Because that's way back.
It was right after they moved from the first location that you're thinking of, which is where I went for that first open mat, into the location next to the Redners.
Okay, yeah.
So basically right when they moved into the Redners location.
Yeah, because I was telling artists that I met them when they were at next to Jimmy John's, and then I was cooking cheesesteaks down, and then they had the podcast going strong then, and then they were the only ones I knew in the area that were doing like a legit podcast, and then they borrowed my space because I just got the studio in Bethlehem, and that was the first legit spot we were in, and then I met Zach and JM through Dan from Cryo, and then that was it, and then they just started coming on the show, and then it's crazy because I've been friends with them and working with them for like 5-6 years now. They're awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good group. Like, as soon as I found them, I was like, all right, these are my people.
Yeah. It's hard to explain, and I try and do it every time I bring somebody on, but it's like the jiu-jitsu community and the finishers community that's at that school everybody's awesome. Everybody's so nice. It's very welcoming. Every time I went to, because I remember Zach just telling me to come out when they were doing the early finishers down in New Jersey at, I forget his... the brothers' school down there in Jersey.
The show The Art School.
Yeah. The show The Art was like the early ones.
I forget what the school one was. I know a few were at Pure MMA in the beginning.
Is it the Main brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they went around to a couple different places, but I didn't know anybody. And like I think I just like knew Preet maybe, like from seeing him out at like the fights at the bar, and then like you know, and then I just started kind of recognizing people, but like everybody always, you know, because I would just take footage, and then like I didn't even know what I was going to do with it back then. Like I was just like, oh, I'll film, I'll take pictures. Like it's not what I do now, where I understand social media and all that. But everybody was so nice to me, and that was one of the first things I said. I was like, yo, this is a super dope community where like everybody's really fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now you're going to the school nonstop. Like you're obviously obsessed at this point because you're going 3 to 4 times a week. What was the draw to you? Were you learning faster because you were at you were at a school with like more stuff going on and it was more your scene? Like what kind of drew you to constantly keep coming back?
I think they were focused on a lot of the same things that I was at the time, as far as like EBI sub only, like their style of game, coming from a more traditional school. It was kind of like a lot of point stuff. IBJJF is the best, once you score some points, just like stall them out, that type deal. And that's not really my style. Like the 10th Planet style, going for the sub, pushing, that's more of my style. I just think it's more exciting.
Yeah.
Especially watching EBI and like all of the people, Grace at the time, Gary Tonin was like breaking out. Just that style of grappling is what brings more spectators. And obviously right now I kind of feel like the most watched jiu-jitsu events and the ones that bring in the most money are the no-gi events. And that's kind of for a reason. I feel like they're just more exciting. Obviously, That's my personal preference. I know a lot of people that love the gi will hate me for saying that. But
say what you want.
But I abandoned the gi, and I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I just think it wasn't for me. No-gi in general is a lot more athletic, I feel. You can't just hold someone because you're holding their clothes. You really have to hold their actual body, and that's a lot more difficult. So you need to really know what you're doing and have that athleticism. There's so many fast scrambles as opposed to in the gi. I feel like it's a little more slowed down.
Yeah.
So it was just my personal preference. But again, like the style, the 10th Planet specific style with like the rubber guard stuff, the leg locks, all of that, I really felt like it enabled me to utilize my natural advantages. Like I'm 6 feet tall. I'm very lanky for a woman. So yeah, why not use that?
Yeah. When you started kind of digging into it, when did you start competing and start really? Because I remember when you started kind of like, stepping into your own and, competing more and making a name for yourself and just kind of like, I just saw you were doing it more. What was the first time when you started competing through the school?
Well, I started competing originally with my gi school, but I guess I feel like my first like breakout competition, I mean, I didn't even win, so I don't know if you could call it a breakout competition, but basically when I was still a blue belt, like almost a year into training with the guys, they had the finishers sub only 4, they had a women's bracket, 150 pounds, the one Amanda Levy won. And
I was there for that. Yeah.
And a bunch of chicks pulled out last minute, man. And they were like hurting for people. So I was just kind of like, well, like I'd have to cut some weight, but hey, I'm available. Like I would do it if you will accept my lowly self. And Zach gave me the opportunity, which was really cool for me, because it's more of like that was my first like pro event kind of opportunity. It was live streamed. Like they had my name on the screen.
I mean, those events are always big. There's always people at them. And I remember going to that event. And what's funny is I see these people that I saw winning finishers, and then I see them in these bigger tournaments now, like on Fight Pass and stuff, or like I'll see people posting and I'll be like, I remember that person, they were at finishers. Like it's cool always seeing like people come up through it. And those weren't like schlub things. Like those early ones were like when he was doing them in like the warehouse vibes, and it was like, it was like 8 Mile. There's like people standing around everywhere. Like those shows were dope. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Those guys put on such a cool show. So what was that like for you to have competed in, the gi and probably more of a traditional style competition than to go to this thing that's being live streamed and like there's the hype on it and they got the women's bracket? How nervous were you going into that?
Oh, very, but also it's always easier being the underdog.
Yeah.
Because, I, at the time, didn't look at myself as very special. I was like a fairly fresh blue belt, 1 year blue belt. That's not super experienced. So I was just kind of like, hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
There was no pressure. Whenever you start to get better and people think you're good, that's when the pressure comes. That's when the pressure comes, because then people like expect you to win and it's a whole thing. Other people's expectations is where a lot of the
I never
stress
thought of it that
comes
way,
from.
and that is very true. Because
I
it's
would
like
always
if you
rather
talk
be the underdog.
Yeah, if you talk yourself into doing that and you want to do it and you want to compete, and then when other people start, I never thought of it that way, because it's a metaphor through a lot of things in life, because people try and like accomplish goals and stuff, but then when other people start talking about what you're doing, that's when it starts getting like closed in, and it's like, well, why are you talking about it? Like, let me just do it. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to have on that. So yeah, so I mean. So you went in as the underdog to that. What was it like even just getting that under your belt of doing one of them?
Oh, it was really cool.
Were you hooked on it?
I mean, of course I wanted to do more. So yeah, I would say I started to compete a decent bit under the 10th Planet banner, mostly like local Naga type stuff, you know. But I mean, I've done like random super fights, and I mean, since the guys started the finishers sub only, like look at the East Coast now, everyone has their own random, you know, promotion that they're doing, putting on matches and all that kind of stuff. There's so many more opportunities to compete now compared to what there used to be. And I mean, I feel like our school was the first to do it out here, you know, and everyone just kind of jumped on board like, hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah. They're like, let me get a Sean's contact. So where were you at then when you got that first one done? You know, you were still traveling 2 hours? Like, you know, where were you at in your career as far as like where you wanted to go with jiu-jitsu? And like, were you thinking about opening up into other things? And I know we talked briefly about how you were, you know, writing at the time for what was it, like a news source or something? Like, I mean, it's crazy that you're doing all this shit, but like, where are you finding time to do all this stuff? Like, where was it kind of laid out at that point?
I don't know. Sometimes I still wonder. The My MMA News writing came about somewhat around the time that
Is that local to you or local to this area?
I think it's local to this area. I know they cover a lot of stuff on the East Coast, and they've got a lot of writers out here, but yeah, they're kind of, I mean, they cover everything. Obviously, primarily MMA stuff.
Yeah.
But I was one of the first people, I felt, that started writing about more jiu-jitsu related stuff.
How did you even get involved with writing? Do you write? I mean, like you always wrote well for the articles and stuff that I read, but like, where did the writing come from? Was it something that you excelled at in high school? Was it something that, I mean, people just don't write. Like, you have to know how to do
Trust
it.
me,
And then
I know.
I mean, I guess they do, but like, you know what I mean? Did you go after that job? How did you fall into writing?
Oh, I didn't go after that job at all, but but I'm glad it was offered to me. Honestly, I barely even consider it a job. But yes, I've always been really into writing. I've always been like a journaler, you know, and writing poems, random stuff whenever I was growing up. And I never really had like journalist kind of writing experience. It was more just like creative writing, that type of stuff. But
did you do it in college?
No, not. I mean, only what I had to. See, I work at a law firm, so I went. You know, I have my bachelor's degree in legal studies. There's a good bit of writing that comes along with that. So yeah, I did plenty of writing in college, but it wasn't like for fun.
Yeah.
But that's probably where I got good at it, I guess you could say. And what really started it was I had a blog that was mostly to help me cope with, at the time I was going through some random autoimmune conditions, and I was kind of like dealing with weird symptoms and figuring that out. I had to go on like an elimination diet and all kinds of weird stuff, work with a functional medicine doctor for 6 months to get back to like good health.
I'm sure that was fun.
Oh, it was lovely. But Eric from My MMA News saw my blog on Twitter.
Yeah, that's how I wanted to see how that connected, because I didn't know if like, that's why I said, did you go after it? But like, so you had a blog and you're writing at the time, and then he saw something of value in your writing, and then asked if you would want to start covering. What did he ask if you wanted to start covering? Jiu-jitsu? Because did he know you were involved in jiu-jitsu at the time?
Yes, but it was definitely earlier in my career. I guess it was already whenever I was training with 10th Planet, but I don't know. The first event I covered was the first women's EBI. And honestly, the first time he approached me to write for him, I was kind of like, like it seems cool, but I don't know if I would be good at that, because I'm not good at coming up with subjects. As stupid as that sounds, like I'm not, like I just said, I was into creative writing, so that makes me sound like I'm creative. But really at this point in my life, I'm not creative. Like I'm not the artist type. I can write about something that happened, you know. So his first suggestion was just doing like live results for this first women's EBI. I think it was EBI 12. So yeah, I can do that. Obviously, I know jiu-jitsu, see what happens. Really, he had seen me like tweeting about different MMA stuff, like fight nights, you know, everyone, MMA Twitter.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of stuff combined with the blog post where he was like, it seems like you can write and you clearly know about like fighting.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer for him.
Yeah, so I mean, originally it wasn't specifically about jiu-jitsu, but I kind of fell into that hole because it was easier for me, I guess, especially since I was doing results right off the bat. I don't think I'd be good at doing like a play-by-play for like a 3-round MMA fight or anything, you know, but EBI, it's mostly like, oh, they got a sub and this is what the sub was.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, you know, so that I can do. And that was my first, and then it kind of blossomed from there. And basically I started to use it to promote my people a lot. Like JM is the one who's like, start writing about us. Like we went out to Ultimate Mat Warriors and Grace twistered a girl and John won. And he was a purple belt beating like black belts to win that belt at the time. So it was kind of a big deal, obviously. And JM was like, you know, interview Grace, write about how awesome she is and like do all this stuff. So I was like, all right, you know, those are some good ideas. If people give me ideas, I'll totally write about it. I'm just not the idea person.
Or sometimes it just takes some general direction from like an idea of like, hey, you should do that. And then, you know, like sometimes when I get advice from people or someone tells me to do something or you just get general, you know, I spitball with Zach all the time, but it's like if sometimes somebody's just like picks you up and they're like, Bup, and then you're like, oh, wow, that lane's, I should be doing that. And then the light goes on and then, you know, because I'm sure you saw like, oh, wow, there is a lot here and people should be talking about this. That was my main thing with those guys when I first met them, and it's totally different now. But when I first met them, I was like, yo, like, why isn't anyone talking about your school? And then that was like the biggest thing that bothered me about them. And that's one of the main reasons, besides that they're awesome guys and the school's super unique and the talent that comes out of there is fucking ridiculous. But like that was my biggest thing where I was like, yo, like why isn't Lehigh Valley Live or any of these people talking about Grace Gundrum? I'm like, Vice talked about Grace Gundrum. Why the fuck isn't anybody in the Valley talking about this? Why are they not talking about who she's fighting next? And I was always annoyed by the fact of that. And that's why I always gave them an open door to have a fucking pedestal to talk on here. And that's why I'm still continuing to do it to this day. Cause I'm like, you should be talking about this more, especially in the Valley. So like for you to take that avenue and then start highlighting the people, that's fucking dope. That's awesome that you could do that for the school. Cause it's like back then it's like, you know, they weren't getting the fucking credit that they deserved for any of this shit. So it's like for you to start doing that must have felt pretty fucking cool. What was that like to put out your first article and then everybody at the school was like, yo, you wrote that. Was that cool?
I don't know if anybody read that very first article, but you know, the one about the EBI 12, I mean, it was the first women's EBI. So.
I meant when you first started like highlighting the school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool knowing that people read it. Honestly, not that many people talk to me directly about reading it, but I do know that people do.
Yeah.
Since then, they've told me so. And like, whenever I got injured, at one point I tore my meniscus. And
you can go right over to writing more.
Yeah, basically, at the time, the Finishers website still had a blog. And Zach was like, hey, like, we need to write for this blog, crazy but I'm not a writer.
Peeling this back all the time. Because every time I talk to somebody, I always forget, like, that there was a blog on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, now it's disappeared. And, like, all of my blog posts are gone. Sad face. But, but at the time, I had a bunch of really cool, you know, I just started, you know, basically doing what you're doing with the podcast, like, highlighting different guys at the school. You know, Jamie was one of them. Mike Henninger was one of them. John was one of them, obviously. You know, it was just really cool to get to like write about the guys. And I think, you know, like you said, we all train together, but we don't necessarily take a deep dive into each other's lives as far as like who we are as people, you know, because we're talking about training or whatever, the fights last night.
Yeah, I had other guys from the school reach out to me and they're like, yo, I didn't know that about him. And they're like, I train with him all the time. And like, it was Josh. Somebody was like, I didn't know he served in the military and all that. And then it's cool because people people who I bring on now, you get into a little bit of their personal stuff, and then they contact me and they're like, yo, I didn't know that about that person at all. And I'm like, yeah, man. I'm like, everybody's got an awesome fucking story about, well, one, everybody has a story in general, and then it's always interesting to me. Everybody's interesting, and then when I started bringing everybody on, I'm like, all right, well, how did you get to finishers? And everybody has a unique journey, because everybody who I'm bringing on has been there for a while. So it's like, you get the history behind it, and you forget all the things that like got them to where they are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're writing now, or then, and you were writing and competing at the time. You had your plate full. So like, where were you at with your life and career, and where was like jiu-jitsu still taking you at that time?
Oh, geez. Well, I would say after like close to the 2-year mark of training at 10th Planet Bethlehem, all of my bills were going up. My paycheck was going down because...
Did you consider moving to the area at all when you were doing that much traveling?
Yeah.
Or were you locked into a job that the other way?
The job was not the issue. I owned my condo. Ah,
yes. All right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I had a house. And
you just can't like bounce on that.
I mean, I kind of did, yeah. but I had to have like a real plan.
Yeah, but it's heavy to like carry. You know what I mean? Like you can't just be like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm gonna call the landlord. Like you got to figure some shit out.
Yeah, I mean, for a while it was like my 5-year plan that I wanted to move out there, but it became more like a 2.5-year plan.
Unless you're getting a hybrid or a Tesla.
Yeah, well, not only that, but I mean, I was putting a lot of miles on the car.
Yeah.
But then honestly, it got worse before it got better, because here's the plan. It was like right before I started dating John too. I decided like, listen, all my bills are going up. Health insurance costs is going up. My paycheck's getting smaller every year. And like, I can't stay here just living by myself, as nice as it is. I wanted to move out there. Honestly, I considered for a moment moving to San Diego too. Like it would have been between 10th Planet Bethlehem or like the 10th Planet Freaks gyms. But San Diego is ridiculous expensive. So I was like, let's not do that. Even Bethlehem is a lot more expensive than where I used to live.
Yeah.
So I already was kind of like, okay, I'm definitely going to need a roommate, but like, fine, I'll deal with that. The plan originally was, because I had student loans too. So I was like, all right, rent out the condo, first step. Move in with my parents, unfortunately, which never actually happened, because I did end up dating John and basically just moved my ass in there. So, but yeah, that was going to be the plan. And then like I was going to be paying off all my student loans while working the 2 jobs. And I knew it was going to take me essentially a year to do before the student loans would be paid off. But then that would free up a lot of money, and I would be able to quit my second job. That was the ultimate goal. So this whole transition with the condo to move out, to Bethlehem, quit the second job, get my student loans paid off. It was like all this big plan. And yeah, basically I just did that. But like I said, you
make it sound like you just did that. There was probably so much stress and bullshit involved.
Oh, yeah. Well, around that time is when John and I started dating. We were dating for like September to December, January-ish, basically, when I rented out my condo. And then from January to almost the end of May, I was working 2 jobs still in Harrisburg, but like staying with John instead of my parents, which was still, it's not quite 2 hours, since I was only ever driving from Harrisburg, not from my house in Mechanicsburg, but it was still like an hour 45 easily.
Yeah.
Hour and 50 minutes, like a long ass drive.
Do you mind driving, or at that point you probably are just used to it? What do you do? Podcast,
I
playlist?
was used to it. Yeah, podcasts. I had like a snack basket in my car.
Yeah. It gets old.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, at that point, since I had gotten rid of my condo, I was like going from Bethlehem to Harrisburg like 6, sometimes 7 days a week, because I'm working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So every freaking day I'm making almost a 4-hour round trip. And that was painful. And I was putting mad miles on my car at that point. But luckily, May, I got a job to replace my primary legal job, and it was a little bit better paying and everything in Allentown. So I was able to switch that, but I kept the serving job in Harrisburg because I only worked a double shift on Saturday, 8 to 8, which really it's like 8 to 9 or 10, depending on when you get your stuff done. Painfully long shift, but I was making bank at this crappy diner.
Serving and I have friends who still serve, especially a couple girls I know that work at a diner, and it's the same thing. Like they have their regulars, and you can go in there and like even bartending. Like having that skill set of bartending and waitressing, the fact that you can take it anywhere, and you could have went to San Diego and started waitressing, like, you know what I mean, like, but having that extra money, when I bartended, it was hard to walk away from that cash. It's I went back a couple times, but and then I just got too old dealing with fucking people and throwing drinks in your face and shit like that. So like when I eventually gave it up, I enjoyed it. I used to be so shy and I couldn't talk to people, and like bartending broke that. But like waitressing and bartending, like it's not a bad gig. I mean, there's a bunch of bullshit involved, but you can make fucking bank.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was easy money and it's cash in your pocket, like, immediately.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I was making most days like $250, $300 for a 12-hour shift, you know, at least $200. So that was that's an extra, you know, $800 a month if you have 4 weekends a month. So there you go.
It's hard to pass up.
Yeah, so at least until I finished basically October of that year. Like May I got the job, October of that year I was fully paid off with my student loans. I paid off like 14 grand.
How did that feel?
Oh my God, amazing. So nice. Like my payment each month wasn't even crazy high, but I just didn't, like, I still had 7 years left at the time where I was like, I'm over this, you know? So to get rid of that was great. And the real kicker is being able to quit the second job and like have weekends. I can't tell you. I mean, you know, all the jiu-jitsu events are on weekends. So every time I would have to like request off, go through this whole thing. Since I'm only working as a waitress part-time, then they would want me to make up that day. So then it's like, okay, so then a different weekend I'm working Saturday and Sunday 8 to 8. And that sucks because then I have no, you know, a super long stretch because then it's right back to my office work on Monday.
Yeah, that grinds. It's tough.
So yeah, that was rough. Now I have weekends and it's amazing.
Because it's funny because as you're going through this, I remember your posts where you're like, where you posted that you were done with this shit, and like, it's cool to hear how much fucking, you know, that was a lot of ball breaking work to fucking get all that debt and everything paid off. And then when did it kind of start turning over to where you started doing more stuff with the women at the school and kind of started carving your own niche into the women's stuff at 10th Planet Bethlehem?
Well, I dabbled a little with women's stuff, and then it like went to the side. Basically,
Is it kind of on the storyline where we're at now, where it's like, you know, all this stuff's paid off, and then you're dabbling, or were you dabbling in it before?
No,
this stuff?
It's more this storyline. Like I had to basically be free of the second job.
Yeah.
And there were a couple girls training at the school at that time. Sam and Sharon. They're both blue belts now. And they were like, oh, we want to do this Naga. And like, they kind of wanted me to take them under their wing. We were already friendly and everything. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like, they asked me to start a class for them, basically like a Naga prep class. So at first it was just me and the two of them. But then we kind of opened it up to people after the first week or two. And then other women, even from other schools, started showing up because Bethlehem didn't have a lot of girls.
No, that's what I was going to point out is that, this is what I told Zach is a really cool part of all this, from what happened the other weekend with the amount of girls you had at that school and the kind of what you brought together is pretty remarkable. So like, I remember there wasn't a lot of girls and it was just kind of like one or two where you were trying to do like, were you doing like self-defense classes in the beginning, or like, I remember they were like very small, but you were still proudly posting them. And then from that to what it is now, that's what I really want to cover, because that's totally changed from that weekend that just went on.
Yeah, basically that class that Sam and Sharon had me start was like 6:15 on a Sunday because it was the only time that would work for us at the time, which is also why it was kind of short-lived because, 6:15 on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be like relaxing. And
that's like right around the time when you're like, fuck, I got to work tomorrow.
Yeah, not like, oh, let's go train, you know? Like I did it for a period of time for them and people were coming, like I said, from other schools and stuff. But then we kind of like dropped off, you know, we did the Naga. I think we continued for a couple months after that, but then it kind of fell apart schedule wise because our schedules changed. So I kind of put things to the side, but then randomly I just decided to host like a women's open mat. I want to say it was December of last year. So
were you still competing at this time as well?
Oh yeah, I've always been.
I don't know why I keep asking if like, oh, well, are you doing more shit?
If
on
I'm
top of the
not
shit
injured,
you're doing?
if I'm not injured, I'm competing. Like I'm not crazy like competing every.
But you got your
weekend.
weekends back, so it's a lot easier for you now to focus on, with you having to focus on the waitressing and all this other stuff. Now you can now it makes sense as to why this has grown, because all the other stuff is now out, and then now you can still take the extra amount of work that was outside work and now fill your plate with jiu-jitsu. So now you can do tournaments, you could do the women's classes, and now everything is kind of just just structured completely in. Now you have a full plate of jiu-jitsu, not my condo, my life, and all these annoying things. It's awesome to point out, because it's like sometimes when people try and do shit, they get discouraged because they have all that stuff on. And if you really come at it with a plan and you sit down, and for me, it's always like, I remember like I still have notebooks filled that I refuse to throw out with like, okay, you need to get this done. Like, all right, well, how are we going to get out of debt? All right, well, let's do this, this, and this. All right, well, how do we get this out? Okay, well, I got to do this for this time. And if you set a timeline, you can literally clear your plate, and then you learn how to put more things on your plate and then live that way. So then you can take the things that you love and then put them back in there. And then for people who like having a lot of shit on their plate, it's really a freeing, awesome experience that your life is the things that you love doing. And I don't think a lot of people pay attention to how to do that, because there's a lot of fucking work before you actually get there. Like, all the stuff that you brush, and everyone does it, you just kind of brush over it because it was your life. But like paying off that student debt, working a job, driving 4 hours every day, like that shit people don't do, and it's shit that people don't want to do. But that's why I bring people on and get into these stories, is because the end result is you get to do something that you love, and now you have more time, and you focused everything on your jiu-jitsu. And then from what started with that class to what it was the other weekend, that's fucking incredible that you did that. There's so many people that would have gave up, went into debt, not drove like that, and it's cool that you did that. So now you start getting into the women's stuff more. Do you get rid of that 6 o'clock class because it just isn't working?
Yeah.
Where do you change that at now?
That had been gone, and like I said, I want to say like a year passed because COVID happened and all that stuff. Like Sam and Sharon weren't really training during COVID because of their home situation and everything. So yeah, that had like died before COVID. And then it was like December of 2020, I guess, whenever I had this first women's open mat, and we had like a decent turnout, and I was like, okay, let's keep doing this like every other month, And then the second time I had a women's open mat, 55 girls showed up.
Yeah.
And that was still at the last location. So we like packed that place out.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like this is a lot of women. And honestly,
where were they coming from?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I think
and I just want to slow it down because it's not something that should be brushed over because of how much this grew. But like where were they seeing all this? Just women seeing that you're posting, and then it's like you meet other girls at tournaments, and then it's kind of social media is keeping you guys together, because I'm sure it's few and far between at every school where it's just a small pocket of women.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I definitely think that competing is a lot of what helped me grow my network of women. You know, you start running into the same girls all the time. Even the finishers sub only, meeting girls there who were competing as part of the pro event. I just started to know a lot of women, and there are plenty of people that I didn't know that also just happened to see my post or heard from a friend, that kind of thing. And I mean, we have had people carpooling from pretty far distances to come to these women's open mats. So
that's cool.
It's been a really impressive turnout. And then, that basically evolved from there, where I had this idea.
What was it like when 50 women were there? Were you like, holy shit? Were you nervous, or like not nervous, but like, was it overwhelming to have that many people show up?
A little bit, only because it was so full in there. Like,
because that was what, the Redner's one?
Yeah, and it was literally a month before we moved into the new location, because it was like end of February, and we moved March of this year into the new location. So we were like bursting at the seams to begin with, and then
Plus, there was
all
a
these
move
women
going on.
yeah. So I mean, I was kind of like, how did this happen? Because the first time we had almost 30 girls, I want to say, or around 30, something like that.
And that's probably just like a full house, manageable.
Yeah. So then to double that, just the second time I had an open mat, my mind was kind of blown.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a lot of good people there. Like some of the people that I had for the camp as instructors, Amanda Levy was there, Jess Feliciano was there. Like lots of really good girls came to train too.
What was that like for you to have everybody come together like that and then kind of see the women's end of it kind of be like a whole thing of everybody there. I mean, there had to have been a moment where you took it in where you're like, holy shit, like all these people are here because I posted this thing, and then everybody's working together, and then there's like so much networking, and then people you meet and you're finding out about other tournaments and stuff. What was that like to even just be there? To just sit back at one point, I'm sure you took it in and was like, holy shit, like what was that like?
Honestly, for that open mat, I didn't.
You're like, get out of here.
Not to put it like
You're
that.
You're like, I gotta go waitress.
I don't think it really sunk in at the time.
When did it sink in?
More so at the camp this past weekend or 2
What was that,
weekends
3 weeks ago?
Yeah. Recently, I don't know. Time is flying in my life. I can't even keep track of the days anymore. But yeah, I would say the women's camp is when it really, because it was not just seeing all of the women in the room, but I had so many people specifically telling me like what an amazing experience it was for them.
It was crazy to see on social media. When you decided to come up with the women's camp, because I think Zach was telling me that they were staying at the Airbnb at Seven Sirens. Like, what was the whole, like, let's break down the exact, like the idea of the camp. Like what it was for you is that you wanted the women to come out for 3 days. Is it 2 days? Like what was your idea behind the camp?
2 days, because I wanted to work around like our regular schedule. I didn't want Zach to have to cancel any classes. I knew he would not want to do that anyway. So basically I planned it, Saturday after the regular class ended, and then Sunday after like John's ADCC training class ends. So 2 days. So I booked the Airbnb for one night, and yeah, I just kind of reached out to people and was like, hey, would you want to do
How many
this?
people stayed at the Airbnb? Because I got a chance to see that Airbnb because it was the Seven Sirens one, right? That's cool up there. I want to use that. I want to use Seven Sirens for Jokes and Chokes, and I want to take the Airbnb as the green room, but you can sleep like 13 to 20 people there. There's like a full kitchen.
That's the funny thing. It's huge, and I thought there would end up being more people staying there than there ended up being.
How many people stayed?
Only 3.
Oh, well, at least they had the place to themselves.
Yeah, it was Amanda, Fatima, and Fatima's sister, Trista.
Yeah.
Because I had originally said, like, each of the instructors can bring an uke for free, so that they can have, like, one girlfriend, basically, to come with them, do the moves on. But, like, the only person that did... I guess Jess Feliciano brought someone, but she didn't stay at the Airbnb because she had to work and everything the next day.
So were there people that left and came back the next day?
I think there were a lot of people that were more local, yeah. But as far as the instructors, I wanted them to have some place to go.
Absolutely.
But like Brittany is kind of local, so she had some place to stay. So she ended up not staying there. But Amanda, Fatima, and Trista for sure.
But it's awesome that you even thought about having that or used it as a thing to get people to come.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted them to be... Basically, my whole focus of this camp was I wanted to really take good care of the instructors because I feel like women don't get a lot of opportunities to do seminars and make money and that kind of stuff in jiu-jitsu, at least compared to the men, so... Yeah, I wanted to pay them a good bit per hour, and I also wanted to kind of like spoil them, like, here's your place to stay, everything's taken care of, that kind of thing. Plus it was like part of getting them to agree to even do this for me.
But it's also a good way to, because it's what's crazy, well, it's not crazy, but like I had the similar idea with the comics for Jokes and Chokes. Like I think they're from Jersey, but I was like, hey, I'm going to pay you guys. And then he was like, oh, well, I want this. And I was like, I'm going to pay you more than that. And then I was like, I'm going to get you guys an Airbnb. You don't have to stay here, but you're more than welcome if you guys want to drink and crash here. But I think it's very important when you start learning how to build out a seminar or build out anything that you're hosting, whether it be in an event or anything. And if you take care of people and learn how to take care of people in the beginning, you're always going to be taking care of people. And then what'll trickle down from that is like, if an instructor asks another instructor, like, hey, did you do anything with Laura? Oh man, she's awesome. She took care of us so much. And like, we had a place to stay. And like, if you always go above and beyond and treat people way better than most do, the results on that is just going to be it's just going to be so much better. Like they're going to teach better because like they're staying at an Airbnb and they can go down and get a drink if they want to, or like, it's not like, oh dude, it's like we had to sleep in our car. And then, you know what I mean? Like that's awesome that, you even thought to like overtake care of everybody.
Oh, yeah. I got them vegan treats, too. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do it up. Even the Siren's Lair that they call it, you know, when you check in, you get a free 6-pack.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's a thing. So
And it's super nice and affordable.
Oh, yeah. It was, I mean, and it gave us a place downstairs at Seven Sirens. Like, I've never gone to Seven Sirens
That's
before,
dope.
so I
Yeah.
had no idea. But we were, like, playing shuffleboard,
Yep.
hanging out.
Yeah,
Like, it was
it's a
just
really cool place to
cool.
go. We had Jordan on. I think we had him on probably like towards the end of the pandemic, and then he just became a friend of the show, and like he came out to get burgers, and he's always supporting what we're doing, and I ran it by him, and I was like, I want to do Jokes and Chokes here, because you were at the first one, right?
No.
How dare
that's when
you.
I was still working, and I
Yeah.
was pissed because I was waitressing that day.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I thought you
John,
were there.
John was there.
John was there because he came up and I had him give out one of the prizes or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we do that again, I mean, you've been in there. That place is killer for a venue like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And then and then use the green room as that. And then I want to have food outside because they have like the food truck thing there. So it's like I'll either do burgers or I don't know. Zach's like, dude, why don't you just enjoy the show and not work the entire time? But it would be cool to do food and then have because we've. Like there's so much support from the community as well. So like we had like 85 people and it was primarily all jujitsu was coming out because like Frick was doing stand up. I got to meet Jordan next week, but that's awesome that you went above and beyond for that. So how did it go when you actually were running it? Did everything go smooth or were you like shitting your pants the entire time?
For the most part, I'll say everything went really smooth. There were like a couple little hiccups that I was nervous about. This is our first winter in the new spot.
Yeah.
And the first day, there were so many chicks in there. I think it got like really humid, and the red pipes that are up in the ceiling started like having condensation and dripping. Like at first, the one chick was like, "Hey, someone like bled on the mat or something." So I wiped it up. But then next thing you know, it's like a whole
It was
pattern,
like the line, yeah.
like a dripping pattern, and you're like, "Oh, that clearly matches the line of the pipe up
Yeah.
there." So yeah, but luckily that was like right at the end, so I don't think anyone really, like, some people noticed the spots, but they didn't really know what it was. I was really worried that was going to happen again the second day, but somehow it did not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got lucky with that one. It doesn't seem like it's been a lot more of a problem the past few, like
There's so
weeks
many
I've been
people in there.
Bethlehem. Yeah. But I think maybe we just had to adjust the heat a little or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I mean it's growing pains of going into a new spot like that, and you packed the place out. So, what was that like for you to to be doing that for 2 days, and then like that was your priority to like get these classes going and everything, and then like when you started posting the pictures, I was so bummed because I was like, yeah, because I would have done food if you would have had 10 people there. I don't care. Like I told you before, like I'm like, yo, anytime you want to do this, let me know. It's not a big deal, and I mean that is where I created the beginning of cooking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like those guys pushed me to do it where they're like, Zach's like, you're doing the food. And I'm like, fuck. And then like, cause I was like feeding them down here and they're like, dude, why aren't you doing this? So like Finishers is to me is a special place because it's where all my food stuff started again. So like, I'll always do food for you. But then when I saw when there was that many people, I'm like, we would have sold out of burgers. That would have been cool. We'll have to do it next time and figure out like, cause I know some of the chicks are vegan and Amy always gives me shit about doing something vegan. So like we could do something unique next time you do something like that.
Yeah.
So how many girls did you have there total? It looked like that place was packed.
Almost 60 each day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it crossed over where both went to both days, or was there some people one day, some people the next?
Almost everyone went to both days. There were more people that could do Saturday only than Sunday only, so Sunday it was a little bit lighter as far as attendance, but also that was fine. I only feel bad for the people that could only make Sunday because by day 2, like it was 3 hours of technique, and then an hour and a half of rolling each day. And on Sunday, whenever we started rolls, it looked completely different than on Saturday when we started rolls, because I think people were really sore, maybe a little tired, that kind of thing. So, but there was probably only like 3 people that were Sunday only.
Yeah.
So.
What are your plans moving forward with like, you know, like with everything you've done now, and you've had the success of doing the women's stuff, and you're growing the community, and it's cool that everybody's coming together, and you're competing, but like now you got a little bit, you have way more time, and like the school is obviously completely different, where there's so much more opportunity when you're in a position like yourself to be hosting and doing stuff like that. Like, what are your plans coming down the pipe? Do you want to do something, you know, in December with the girls? Are you doing something in November again? Do you plan on competing? Like, what do you kind of got going on?
I compete this weekend.
Yeah, doggy.
I'm doing, actually, since you said about having Brittany on recently, like both her and I are doing ADCC
She's
trials
awesome.
this
You guys will have to
weekend.
come on one time together.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah.
I love her so much.
It'd be fun.
You know, we're in the same division. Praying that I don't have anything to do with her on my side of the bracket just because I love her too much. But she's been such a great training partner for this. But as far as the women's events go, yes, December will be our next women's open mat. I think it's December 11th. I picked a Saturday for once. Usually I do Sunday, but there are like a handful of girls that always work Sunday, and I feel bad for them. So it's like, all right, let's switch it up this time.
And if you're not doing a tournament at the school, I mean, no one's going to be there in the evening.
Yeah. I mean, I think I planned it for like 2 and classes end at 1, so that's plenty of time. So yeah, that'll be the next. I'm really hoping that we'll get a lot of people for that too, especially because of the camp and everything.
How far out do you got to start promoting for that?
Well, I'm crazy and I'm a very advanced planner, and I remember how my life was whenever I was a waitress and I had to put in the requests off and like really know like what weekend this and like budget this and make up this day then, you know. So I like to just as soon as the event, I do them every 2 months, and as soon as the last event happens.
Oh, I like that you have a plan already in place to do them every 2 months.
Yeah, because I mean,
it gives you time to breathe in between and then to kind of like get back. Because if you do them too, like with the pop-ups, like I'm so burned out on them at this point. Like I'm excited to do finishers again because, like I said, that's where I started, where I run into some of the guys are like, you're coming back. I'm like, I'm bringing a menu because I just always did the burger. But when you do too much of that stuff, like you need a break from it. You need to like recharge and want to do it again. You start doing them too much, it's just going to be, you're not going to want to do them anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, not even just that, but I mean, if you give the people too much, then they start to take it for granted.
Yeah.
So I like to spread them out a little bit.
That's why I like selling out of burgers and not bringing enough.
Yeah. If it's every month, people that live, you know, say 2 hours away or something aren't going to make that trip.
No.
If it's every other month and they know that a bunch of people show up every time, then they'll be more likely to make the effort to show up, I feel like. So I like to spread them out a little bit.
Do you have a plan in place for the next one? Do you want to promote it a little bit now?
I mean, there's never really a plan for that. I mean,
with like, do you have instructors or like what's kind of?
No,
what are you doing with this one?
It's just gonna be an open mat.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because I do the open mats every 2 months. The next camp is not gonna be for another.
Confused.
No, the camp is too much work.
Yeah.
I mean, not too much work. It's nice and
lot.
all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot, and it's going to be almost impossible for me to top my first instructor list, and I'm already stressing about that. But I'm basically not doing another camp for like another year, I think.
That's cool.
So I like to spread things out, because then sub out too. Like I have a little hand in that. We haven't even talked about sub out, but that's another women's thing. That is like a jiu-jitsu event. I don't want to call it a tournament because it's not really tournament style. It's super fights, but it's for raising money for domestic violence victims for a local nonprofit. We had one event, I want to say in May of this year. My friend Sabrina Kelly owns the Vault BJJ with her husband Matt Kelly. It was her kind of idea to like have some kind of women's event. So we put our heads together and came up with that. And we have another one that's coming up in March. So even though I'm not doing like a camp,
you could always come back on here to promote that stuff too.
Other things you could say. Like you said, I've always got my plate full. I'm always plotting something. So, you know.
Well, it's cool that
spread it out a little
can
bit.
Now put it all towards jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, just wait. Because we talked about my last like transitional period where I rented out my condo and everything. I'm in another transitional period, and you're about to see in like a year, basically, the next evolution of Laura.
What are your goals with that evolution?
My goals is to really be free. My old goal was, you know, pay off all of my student loans and quit the extra job, right? Well, now my goal is to be self-employed.
Awesome.
And yeah, leave the office. And I'm in school right now 2 nights a week, so I've been like extra busy lately. So I really haven't been training
First
as
of
much
all,
as
you're
I
extra
should be.
busy constantly, not lately.
I know. But seriously lately,
Yeah.
because I mean, Tuesday and Thursday nights, I go straight from the office to school. I'm working on getting my massage therapy license. I'm going to try and start up like basically a sports focus, like massage therapy, cupping, recovery kind of business.
That's awesome.
You know, well, obviously, you know, like Amy does that kind of thing too. Like she's super willing to take me under her wing because she's been doing sports, recovery and treatments for a long time.
She keeps dodging me on coming on here. I'll get her.
She's probably shy.
I'll get her.
Yeah. I'll have her come on with me sometime to loosen her
Yeah,
up.
I always.
I'm a talker, as
I
you
think
can
she
see.
wants to finish what she's doing with school, which I get it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she's doing,
I see her posts. They just look exhausting.
Yeah, she's super busy too, and she's trying to transition to all of the acupuncture stuff since that's what she's going to school for right now. So yeah, basically working on doing that. And I feel like, I know a lot of people already, as we've discussed. I have a pretty good network between the school and all of our teammates and everything.
It's the best way to start. You have the network. I mean, everything I've done off of the clothing was from the networking and the people that fucked with the clothing.
Yeah. And I mean, our group especially is so supportive of like all of our people and supporting our people's businesses, like you were saying about the pop-ups and everything, and like Zach egging you on, and like our group really wants people to grow and, get to that next evolution, like I'm saying.
We talked about that on Artists' podcast, and I said it's very unique at finishers because everybody's trying to go somewhere, and like they're using jiu-jitsu or whatever in that platform, but like everyone you talk to is like trying to do their own thing, like Jimbo and and just talking to artists and Jamie and Bryant's in the back, and then those guys are doing their podcast now, and I'm going to bring those guys on. But it's like there is just a plethora of people that are just trying to do their own things and start their own businesses, and everybody's pushing each other. It's a very unique atmosphere in that school. It's hard to explain, but when you go in there, you can feel it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being around it just encourages you to be your best self and your most authentic self.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't want to hold you up any longer because you probably have to get up and work, or I don't know if you have to drive to Tennessee tonight or whatever you're doing. I've always wanted to get to know you more. I've always saw how busy you were, and it was interesting to pull back the layers and see where that's come from. And then, like I said to Zach, like it's pretty remarkable what you've done with seeing your first post with just having a couple girls at a class to like really be like, I was like, holy shit. Because then I follow a couple of the other girls in jiu-jitsu, and then seeing them post it, like everybody was like super proud of the event, and you should be proud of yourself for coming this far. And like I said before when I touched on it, because there's always something I pull out and try and explain to people, but the fact of like you not giving up and paying off that school debt and not having it be an anchor and doing the 4-hour trips to come to class and not have, everybody can make an excuse not to go somewhere, and then doing all that, getting over all those hurdles, then putting that all behind you, then filling up that, and not just taking a break, but keeping the same amount of work on your plate because now you know how to work that much, and putting jiu-jitsu there, and then see you moving mountains with it, and then hearing about the stuff with Seven Sirens and how you want to overly be generous to people so that your event's better. It was really remarkable story. I always love becoming friends with people down here. It'll be cool now seeing you next time I see you because I know your story, and I love putting out the stories of finishers. I want to give you a chance to let anybody know how they can follow you, especially if women are wanting to come to your events or the things that you're doing, and you just do so much for the community with women. I just want to give you a chance to give any opportunity of what your social media is or how anybody can get a hold of you.
Okay, well, I guess the best place is probably my personal Instagram at Lorelai's10p. We also have like a general 10th Planet girl account, 10p Girl Goons. So you could follow that. We usually repost a lot of the women's events on there. And then also at Sub Out Domestic Violence, if you're interested in that. Our next event's going to be in March. We're looking for like 30 super fights. So that's an all women's event too, if you want to keep up with those updates.
Yeah, and like I said, if you want to come on here to promote any of those events, or we'll definitely have to do one with you and Brittany and just hang out down here. That'll be so much fun. She just sat down and just did the podcast, and I laughed the entire time. And like I said, you don't get an hour with somebody again. So like, well, I'll start texting you this week or next week, and we'll schedule something between the three of us, and we'll do it soon, end of November, early December. I love bringing you guys on. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, it's neveragainstudio.com. You can get everything there. If you want to do the YouTube, you can search Never Again Studio on YouTube, Never Again Studio on Instagram. If you want to contact me, that is the easiest way to do it there. Everything, neveragainstudio.com has the apparel. And that's it. Go there if you want to see any of this shit. I'm tired of closing the show out this way. I hope I stop doing this at the new studio and then just play a clip at the end. Nazoammo.com. If you want 9mm, hit me up. We still have that going on. If you're through the school, do it through Zach, because Zach gets a cut of that. Other than that, check everything out that she's doing and give her a follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was dope.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.